Hi, teachers. Good afternoon. My name is Precious, and I'm a visual arts teacher at Southfield International School and Colleges. I'm here to share with you some of the insights that I've learned from the 2 years that I've been teaching visual arts across levels. So that's grades 6 to 12, all throughout the year. And I really hope you don't think that this is limited to teachers who are interested in the arts. It's just that, I'm more into illustration, so that's the context that I'll be coming from. But these are strategies and ideas that are applicable to, any craft that you are committed to and would like to stay committed to, especially during these turbulent times. So I really hope that we learn a thing or two from each other, and I look forward to seeing your questions at the end of the session. Thank you again, and let's dive in. So for part one, I'd like us to just condition ourselves first on how we should feel and think about the process of creating. So creativity begins when you first start because you can. You don't easily become discouraged because of perhaps a lack in progress, or you stopped along the way and you got rusty. It's normal. It's normal for everyone to sometimes feel demotivated and feel stuck. But what matters the most is that you start even imperfectly. Second, you document experiences. It doesn't have to be elaborate journals. It can be a voice note. It can be a doodle. And the reason why it matters is, we're going through so many things that are new for the first time. You never can tell what your documentation will be worth in the future. Third, create when you are not in the mood. We all know that this is a skill or like a muscle that we would like to develop in our learners. That grit and that perseverance of, really staying committed to your craft even when you don't feel like, really giving time to it. Fourth, creating when you have those light bulb aha moments is just as important. Always seize those moments and don't take them lightly. They might result into something even better. Fifth, acknowledge your influence as an educator. Year after year, we get these new batches of students whom we can inspire, and that's not something that we should ever take it. I mean, we should never take for granted. So these are just the 5 points that I hope you carry along with you as we proceed to the first part of the talk. We all have our ECQ stories. Personally, I haven't gotten back to school since the quarantine started. I started developing cabin fever, washing my hands out of paranoia, and you've probably experienced the same things. So, if it's ongoing and we're still experiencing constant anxiety, why does it matter now to make art or make beautiful things? Now, I'd like to share with you a blessing in disguise that was the result of the ECQ. I had to completely modify my lessons, as most of us probably did, because my students had left behind their watercolor kits at school, and so I had to change the final assessment to something that they could do from home with anything that they had. And there was this trend going on Twitter, initiated by the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, USA, called the Getty Challenge. Basically, you just had to copy the painting as accurately as you can, as my students did from the examples here, and they nailed it. I was completely surprised, and goes without saying that I was just impressed by their works. If you can see, I hope you don't mind that I concealed part of their faces for data privacy, but I hope that this goes to show that even under uncomfortable circumstances, under unconventional and misfortune and very unexpected situations, amazing works can also come forth. Nowadays, it's very difficult to create simply out of joy or out of passion. It feels like apart from our job or anything that can be profitable, we just feel discouraged to invest additional time and effort in such things. So I know that a recurring question you might have in mind is, why should I bother creating at all? I have so much on my plate apart from having to fully shift from traditional to online teaching. It's just something unnecessary. So here I'd like to present 5 reasons why I think creativity is even more important now, and why I feel we are more capable than we think we are in terms of creating something meaningful at this time of the pandemic. Every year, the World Economic Forum releases a list of top 10 skills which are deemed valuable by employers. And if you've noticed the rank of creativity from 2015 compared to that of 2020, it rose from the 10th in rank to the 3rd. And I think primarily this is because so many people are shifting to content creation. There is a lot more competition in terms of innovative practices and really delivery and appeal to young audiences. So it's not really just a matter of keeping yourself busy or keeping yourself entertained, but it really is a highly employable skill as of this year. Whenever I feel discouraged or too lazy to create at all, I like to remind myself that 36,000 years ago, before people started visiting museums and buying expensive art pieces, hunter-gatherers from the Upper Paleolithic period already started making drawings. And it wasn't easy to acquire paint at the time, let alone a lamp. The people literally had to hunt for the fat that would sustain the flame of a lamp just to, paint things like boars and mammoths and the stick figures of people. Kids often tell me, "Miss, the only thing I can draw is a stick figure." Even adults tell me that. Then I just remember that it's always been a part of us to try to set these memories in stone and try to imitate the things around us. It's basically part of our human experience. By the way, this scene is actually an interactive virtual tour of the Cave of Altamira, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Spain. This is one of the locations where massive cave art was discovered. I really recommend this app, Mosaic 3D, first because it's free, and second because it also has topics on geography, science, history, tech, and much more. Just to show you more examples from the Mosaic 3D app to see how diverse the topics are, here are sample screenshots on topics like the bubonic plague, Taj Mahal, Statue of Liberty. There are also cross-sections of famous buildings and parts of the earth like layers of the ocean, and even tours through iconic places like Marie Curie's laboratory, Da Vinci's workshop, and the like. Moving on to the next reason on why it's important to create now is I feel that we might not feel it now, that this is something worth remembering. We usually don't feel that way about uncomfortable circumstances or experiences that we associate with sorrow or loss, which some of us may be experiencing right now. But the nature of a creative during difficult times is really to work even harder at trying to remember every single detail. Take, for instance, the self-portraits by Edward Munch. You might recognize his name. He painted The Scream. Can you imagine having paintings titled this way, self-portrait during the Spanish flu, a self-portrait after the Spanish flu? These are actually the titles of his works, and you'd think it absurd at the time, but now that he painted them, it's part of history. People now have a better idea of how people coped with with circumstances that are similar to ours, that we're all cooped up at home, that we feel idle, and we don't have much to do. It doesn't feel significant now, but there's no telling how important the things you create can be to a historian of the future. To put it into a more relevant context, I'd like to share the sample works of a teacher artist who I look up to. Miss Patty Manongsong as an English teacher at Miriam College, and during the early stages of the ECQ, when everyone was experiencing a lot of discomfort over the news, a lot of anger, a lot of, social media was just full of angry reacts at the time. And what she did, which we really looked forward to every time, was to paint the pictures that accompanied headlines in the trending news. So you might see from this collage which she titled the series Faces of Quarantine. You might find Mayor Vico Soto in blue, or our frontliners wearing garbage bags for PPEs. And looking back, it feels as though it was such a long time ago already, because every month seems to be so bombarded with, a new controversial issue. And this is precisely what I mean by we will want to remember this. We will want to remember, how the circumstances were dealt with, how we reacted, how we felt at the time. And this is something that, when we're caught up in the moment, it doesn't feel like something particularly motivating to create about, but it could be of great significance even a month later without us realizing it. I highly encourage you to follow Miss Patty. Her page on Facebook is Art and Letters by PCM. The third, and what I feel is the most important reason as to why we should continue creating now, is that great works can also, and sometimes more often, emerge from times of great discomfort. Sometimes it's when we are beaten down, when we are inconvenienced. Usually, it's these times that we deem unlikely that we come up with our best ideas, our most innovative solutions. And we should take advantage of this time, not in a way that we're obligated to, but it's always nice to know that it's a possibility. It's very rare that a new art period would emerge from a time that artists are greatly satisfied with. Usually it's because they're tired of old ways. That's why artists try a different style, a different method, a different intention behind their work. If we observe these two works by Vincent Van Gogh, we will notice that, well, first, he greatly developed his style since his first painting, Potato Eaters. And second, you might assume that he was in a better disposition or at a better stage in life by the time he made Starry Night, which was greatly praised and continues to be a very iconic work. But we forget that Van Gogh had just cut off his ear when he painted this. He was not stable in terms of his emotions, in terms of his thought patterns. It was not a time of great comfort, and yet this was when he made this incredibly significant work in art history. Now, it's a myth that the artist or anyone who aspires to create has to be in suffering in order to make something great and meaningful. It can, however, be an opportunity to empathize unknowingly with other people. And to illustrate this point, I'd like to share a personal experience of when I was in my first year of teaching and I had a bad day. I was probably feeling extra tired. So I decided to just get out some paper and a pencil instead of ranting or talking about it with others, to just draw the kind of comfort that I would have wanted to receive. And for some reason, I felt like posting it, to which I received an incredible response. Just hours later, I saw that thousands of people were sharing it, up to 17,000 in like less than a day. So that was like a learning point for me. Strangers were messaging me about how they would save it as their wallpaper to help deal with their anxiety and help cope with their depression. And so, you never know how that sorrow or that very unfortunate circumstance can be a point of inspiration or even comfort for other people. Then again, something that also resonates just as much with other people who are going through a difficult time is something you create out of hope. For instance, the Diary of Anne Frank, she never suspected that writing about her friends or her first love would end up inspiring so many people generations after her life ended. And to be able to say that at the end of the day, I still believe that people are genuinely good at heart after witnessing the nature of a war, that is really a point of power, actually, and a point of influence. So never underestimate the things that you make which are also suggestive of hopefulness. For the fifth and final point, before we proceed to strategies we can practice to become more creative, I'd like to share this quote from prominent artist Frida Kahlo, who was famous for her self-portraits. She said, "At the end of the day, we can endure much more than we think we can." And that's very true, especially when you realize that this is coming from an artist who discovered her craft after a life-changing tragedy. And she ended up with several broken bones after a road accident. To add salt to her wounds, her lover abandoned her, the same lover whom she was with during the accident. And it almost seemed like life had ended for her, but it was just about to begin, because that was when, in her boredom from being bedridden for so long, that she decided to discover her craft. And this point is really more on our influence, that reach of influence that we have as teachers. Every year, like what I mentioned, we always have new people, new individuals observing our lives. And not just our lives, but what we make of these difficult circumstances. So I hope that, we always acknowledge that this, whatever we create, has some impact of a sort to the people around us. All right, so now let's proceed to the second part of the talk. So let's talk about what we can do in order for us to be more creative, or to integrate more habits that would churn new ideas or leave us feeling inspired. First, you must understand why creativity is actually very beneficial for you, not just for your mental health, but for your overall perception of life. Then what people would find as very boring or probably ordinary, the creative mind makes something out of it. So that's the first point. Second, customizing your social media feed. I mentioned, as a content writer, I gained insights on how people engage with online platforms, what it means when you interact with content, and it's important, if you're taking your ideas seriously, that you are mindful of who you subscribe to. Diversify your sources of inspiration. Yeah, and third, turn your craft into a response or a solution to a problem. Now, this is more on the type of creative that we would like to help grow in our learners, especially post pandemic. So, why is creativity good for us? Well, in order to be fearless in pursuing different ways of thinking and ways of approaching things, it takes grit and it takes routine. A lot of people think that, when you're talented, you have it easy. Like, ideas they just come to you like that. But it took so many years of persistence, of discipline, and these are all, the traits that we would like our learners to develop over time, especially now with social media. It's so important to have autonomy of thought. And what I mean is, not being easily persuaded by the reacts of a Facebook post, or the number of retweets and or likes on Instagram. We'd like learners to decide things for themselves and to be able to have that discernment of what is good for them and for their communities. The problems that our students are facing are unlike anything mankind has ever seen. And so we have to generate learners, and we ourselves have to be creatives who use our skills, use our thought patterns to be thought leaders and thinking of creative solutions. All teachers, in my opinion, we should all be advocates of at least one solution to the multiple problems in our country and in our world. At this time that it feels like we're constantly feeling disappointment or frustration, this quote is a reminder for me constantly. It's by Dr. Maya Angelou, who wrote "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings," and she said, "So use that anger. You write it, you paint it, you dance it, you march it, you vote it, you do everything about it, you talk it. Never stop talking it." And this is exactly how a creative or an artist would respond to the dilemmas that we are currently facing. We don't just settle in that bitterness or in that anger. We produce something out of it. It's so easy to gain likes nowadays. It's so easy to feel discouraged when we don't receive the ideal number of likes within a certain period of time. And this is the kind of mindset we've developed that is dangerous to a flourishing creative mind, because there are solutions that, as we know as teachers, need more time in order to arrive at those points, at those good ideas. So if we show our learners that we also explore new branches of thought, new roads untaken, then this will remind them that you don't need the likes all the time. You don't need the double taps and retweets just to be meaningful or to make meaningful contributions to the world. It's weird how we have conditioned our students to arrive at smart conclusions within less than an hour, or like to come up with a very substantial output within months, or even less, maybe weeks. When in fact, so many of the discoveries that what we benefit from today took probably years, took a lot of rejection, a lot of trial and error. So let's always remind ourselves, first and foremost, and our learners, that some aha moments, if not all, take much longer than others, and that is perfectly okay. Sometimes we just have to nourish those little light bulb moments and not kill them so easily. Now, it's no secret that Filipinos spend an inordinate amount of time online even before the EZQ happened. We spent an average of 9 hours and 45 minutes per day. Can you just imagine how glued we are to our screens, especially now that everyone is, well, a lot of people shifted to online work. Students will shift to online classes. And it's important, especially now, to be conscious and mindful of the things we follow and unfollow. Now, at this point, I'd like you to maybe reflect on this question. What's your social media meal plan? Now, I know it sounds silly, but think of it this way. If you consult a nutritionist and you inform them that you only eat junk food, they would probably remind you of what a food pyramid looks like, and you'd be reminded of how it could potentially lead to sickness and even death in the long run. The same way, if you consult a financial advisor, they would ask you if you only have a single stream of income, because nowadays it's just risky to rely on one profitable career or one income generating source. So, and why don't we think of our creative resources in the same light? How come we always listen to the same things? We watch the same genres. It's important, as someone who aspires to be more creative by thinking differently, that you consume varied types of online resources as well as offline resources, of course. Now, it's not just about getting rid of unnecessary pages or unfollowing influencers that are just making you jealous or envious of their lives. It's also, more importantly, about who you search for and follow and try to discover. How often are you discovering, new writers or new movie genres or new documentaries? These are equally as important because they enrich our thoughts. They enrich the way we look at the world. Now, of course, the convenient thing to do is to just go back again and again to the things that we are familiar with. But that doesn't generate new ideas. It doesn't inspire us to start new conversations. So, to be truly creative and to be independent in thought and to be innovative, we have to welcome diversity into our lives. And that means listening to new speakers, listening to unpopular ideas. Diversity is always a good idea, especially nowadays that we are trying to be more inclusive of one another. So I like to follow artists who don't just make great art, but they challenge me to think. And the earlier comic about Frida Kahlo, that was actually by Zen Pencils. I've been following him for a while. Basically, his style is that he turns famous quotes or biographies into comics. So, for example, here, the life of Frida Kahlo. Like I said, the crash was not the last of her life's tragedies. She was bedridden. Her lover left her, and still, this is where she discovered all of the best things that happened to her life as well, including her new lover Diego. Although they did have a lot of conflicts, she was unable to bear a child, and basically her life just resonated, and the impact of her resilience reached so many thinkers and artists of her time, including Pablo Picasso, who most people aren't aware is her contemporary. So this is just one artist who I recommend, Zen Pencils. Another reason why I recommend that you follow this comic artist is because he makes quotes and illustrates the life stories of people across disciplines. So whether you're teaching literature or science or history, he has the famous quotes attributed or said about these prominent figures. So just a suggestion to help in curating your feed. I highly recommend getting the TED app. It curates topics for me that are not the kinds that I would typically listen to. Although, admittedly, I would still cherry pick sometimes. But actually, that's one of the good features about the app, that the categories are already grouped. So, for example, all the TED talks related to art, and it's constantly being updated whenever a new video comes up. So, I really enjoy using this app because it thinks for me, and this is exactly what I mean by really programming your phone, customizing what you have in your phone to your advantage. So it's just a good idea. Most of the talks are at maximum 20 minutes. Some are just 5 to 10 minutes long. It's just as important that you subscribe to educational channels on YouTube. It's instead of watching mukbangs all the time, which I personally am guilty of also, and watching vloggers. Nothing wrong with that. It's just good, of course, to, like I said, diversify what you feed your mind. So I recommend playlists like, I hope I don't butcher the name, Kurs Gesagt, in a nutshell. And basically, it's about topics in science and existential things like, are you real? Hypothetical ideas like, what if there were aliens? And these are the videos that try to make you think, apart from documentaries. I also recommend Crash Course, and I follow Art Assignment. Yeah, so Art Assignment is the channel that I follow when I'd like to learn or refresh my knowledge on art history. There, so the case for video games, video art, realism. Try to look through the channels that you follow on YouTube, and it's good to just see new videos come up every now and then. That will encourage you to probably even create your own content. I believe at this time that social media is it's hounded by online trolls and negative comments and issues such as art theft and plagiarism. Creating content will actually help us understand the issues that could threaten our students' creative spirit. It's scary to actually post sometimes, because you never know really who will take advantage of your artwork, or like repost and share or screen grab without your permission. But it doesn't have to hinder you, or like I said, it doesn't have to paralyze you in a way that you are keeping everything to yourself and missing out on opportunities to inspire more people. So it's good to create, because in a way we also become more aware of the risks, and in that way we know what type of preventive measures are relevant to our students who are constantly making content as well. So before we part ways, I'd just like to conclude this talk with 3 points. First, you can't create with your eyes closed. And of course, this is both literally and figuratively meant. Andy Warhol, pop artist, said that beauty is in everything, but not everybody sees it. So to truly be um, an outlier or someone who thinks differently for the good, we have to be honest with how we feel, and we can't disconnect. We shouldn't disconnect ourselves from the things that are happening around us. Second, the gems of life are really in our discoveries, the new genres that we pursue, the new talents that we discover of ourselves. Of course, for the most part, I've been talking in the context of drawing and visual arts, but this goes for everything. Keep discovering, keep learning. I know that as teachers, we tend to feel like we have acquired everything that we need, or we have learned everything that there is to know, but the learning never stops. So you just continue finding the gems in these new outlets, both online and offline. And lastly, and more importantly, creativity is among the highest forms of hope. We create because we have this foresight. We create because amidst all the tragedy and all the terrible things happening at this time and for who knows how long, we continue to hope. And this will manifest in the things that we produce, the things that we share, and the things and the ideas that we exchange with the people around us and with our students, most especially. So, thank you again, teachers, for your time. I am incredibly grateful for anyone who actually endured the entirety of this video. I know that sometimes the voice quality changed because I had to video and record at different times. But thank you so much, and I really look forward again to your questions. Um, Continue creating. Don't be ashamed of thinking differently and investing time in creative pursuits. I wish you all the best, and please stay healthy and well. Thank you.